Hi, my name is Tiffany Powell,
And my name is Kirsten Cross.
and for our Rec and Eco project, we were in charge of the Courtyard garden restoration at the Yale Courtyard.
So the purpose for the courtyard, it's located in the nook of the Yale building. And the purpose is to be able to help educate the students on the flora and fauna that is native to the area. For the education aspect, the classes in the Yale, such as herbaceous and dendrology, utilize this. They utilize the courtyard to learn about herbaceous material, and whenever there was woody material, they used that for dendrology. And they're looking at the plants that are native to southern Georgia. And the courtyard is a place where students can see multiple plants without having to travel much because they're all located in the same little area. And it's also purposed to be a relaxation area, using the tables that are there with the canopy over that has the vines that have been established. And it's an area where studying can be done in a controlled, quiet environment.
And as for our objectives and goals, our main goal of this entire project was to remove all the weeds, all the roots, all of the stumps, and just kind of start over from the beginning, start with bare soil. And after we had achieved that, we went to lay out cardboard to prevent new weed growth and to prevent any sort of regrowth from what we had taken out. And then after that, we added mulch on top of the cardboard to kind of create another soil layer for the new plants that we would have planted. And we did want to plant native herbaceous plants, but unfortunately we were not able to get to that final point yet. We were in the process of getting a grant to pay for the plants, but unfortunately ran out of time. But because of that, there is room for future growth, and this does create a new project for other students if they are interested in beautifying the Yale Courtyard. And like Kristen said, this is a great opportunity to provide an area for students to learn in herbaceous or other plants and just kind of have a nice relaxing area.
So what this project required that the Yale already had in stock with the utility room was rakes, shovels, and rogue hose. And we utilized these objects. So for the rakes, we used it to pull the loose weeds out of the soil, as well as to help get some of that root blockage out of the way. And for the shovels, we used that to pry up some of the woody stumps, as well as to transport some of the soil from where there were buckets of grass material that we located out of the garden and got that out of the way. But we had to use some of the soil from the other parts of the garden to replace the soil that was displaced from that. And then we had to use a rogue hoe to trim the edges, go parallel with the brick to remove those without chipping the brick. That way we could get off all the weeds that were stuck there flush against the brick, and to chop up the thick woody lateral roots from the woody material that were there. They were very deep and very thick and hard to bring out.
And for what this project required that we didn't have access to was gloves, of course. We went out and purchased our own gloves. That way we could pull up the weeds and plants, and also to prevent us from getting any blisters or splinters. Also, we needed access to ant killer. Originally, we were just going to dig out the ant bed, but we soon realized that was not possible. So Kirsten luckily had some ant killer, and we used that to spray on the beds, and it really helped. It pretty much got rid of all of the ants that were there. And also we used Kirsten's truck for transporting the mulch from the conclave area to the garden, Yale garden area. And we also used the 5-gallon buckets, which were around the courtyard, to transport the mulch from her truck to the garden beds.
And for our time frame, we began work officially on February 6th. We met with our stakeholders at the courtyard garden to get a on-hand experience with their desires for the garden itself. And we also, after we had talked to them and after we had that meeting, we went in with our gloves and we pulled out some of the matter around the irrigation lines just to see what was going on around there. And then we ended the work formally on April 7th, where there was a written draft of a grant for the plants that was composed for our shareholder, for Dr. Lane, to go over and send out once she was prepared to do so. And there was a total of approximately 12 to 13 hours work done per member, so both of us had done, so it equaled out to be around 25, 26 hours of work.
And the process in general, at first, of course, we met with Dr. Lane and Dr. Moore to see what they had in mind for the Yale Courtyard, exactly what they wanted to do with it, stuff like that. And they really just kind of wanted to start from ground zero. They wanted to dig up all the weeds, dig up all the roots, and just start with as much clean, bare soil as possible. Then after that, we created a game plan for implementing this. So we went through our objectives, we cleared out all the roots, and then we got the cardboard, and then we got the mulch, and we were in the process of getting the plants, but as I mentioned earlier, we were unfortunately able to complete that part of it. As for obtaining the tools, we used the tools available to us in the tool room at the Yale building, and we just checked out tools as we needed, the shovels, row hoes, rakes. We also made in contact with some nurseries in the area. We were trying to see if they had any discounts or any free plants they could give us to possibly fill up the beds with native plants as possible. And we also contacted tree services, which is how we were able to get the mulch. Thankfully, they had a free truckload for us that was dumped in the conclave area, and we were able to safely transport it to the beds.
Yeah, so like we had said, the first step was to remove all the weeds and the roots. And as you can see in this photo, it's very overgrown, very high, and it's just very well established. It's rained a lot. It's been able to flourish through here. And then in the center photo on the right-hand side, you can see that the irrigation line is very covered by all the roots, all the weeds, just all like everything piling up on there. And then in the far right photo, we've moved some of the roots out of the way. That way we can get a better look at the irrigation line before we pulled it up all the way to see if we could see if there was anything that needed to be repaired in the beginning. And you can still see everything's pretty thick even after we've removed some of the stuff.
And then, as we mentioned earlier, our second objective was to lay out the cardboard and prevent any new weed growth forming up through the cardboard or through the soil. There was a portion of time where we had removed some of the weeds, and then we had some rain for a couple days, and when we came back to it again, and we basically kind of had to start over. We had to dig out more weeds and more grasses and stuff that had grown just over that short period of time because of the rain flow. But we got the cardboard down. Dr. Lane gave us these cardboard boxes that she had on hand, so thank you to her for giving us those. And after we had cut them up and kind of puzzle pieced it together, as you can see, getting small pieces into the corners, such like that, we then sprayed all of the cardboard down with water from the hose, as you can see over there. And basically we were doing that to kind of start the biodegradation process of the cardboard. And that is another perk of using the cardboard, is that it is biodegradable and it will eventually degrade into the soil underneath and provide like a better ecosystem for the plants that will be planted in the future.
And so one of our final steps came out to be planting, like adding the mulch on top of the cardboard itself. So like we had said earlier, we contacted and called different tree services within Tipton, and we weren't able to have much luck until we contacted Robert's Tree Service. And we had called him, and he said that he'd be more than willing to help and that he would let me know whenever he had a service. He had one the next day where he removed 2 stumps and was able to get us all the chips from those 2 dead stumps and all the matter that was around it, and that came from those 2 projects. So he brought one big truckload to the back of the conclave area where the president of Forestry Club here at ABAC, Sydney Stone, had him dropped off for. And so we used my truck to then shovel the mulch into the bed of the truck, and then used 5-gallon buckets to transport it from the truck that was in the faculty parking lot of the Yale to the garden itself, where we had spread everything, and then used the shovels to spread, like, even everything out. And you could see here that it went all the way around, and it was a good thick layer, and then we dampened that as well with the hose as much as we could, even though there was a messed up connection at the hose connection area. And so then we went forward with the step. We've been trying to obtain plants throughout the whole process, that way we can get something lined up. And we had contacted Mr. Paul Sumner, which one of our shareholders, Dr. Lane, had gotten us in contact with because he did a plant sale the previous year and is known for doing it around this time. So she got us in contact with him, so we sent him an email about what we were wanting to do, and he sent us another email back with dates, but those were sadly out of our time frame. And so he also had sent us over a local grant application, which is on the side for the Coastal Plain Chapter GNPS local grant application. And they provide $100 worth of either funds, plants, or labor. So we made up the draft for $100 worth of plants or funds if they could give that to us. And we have sent that to Dr. Lane for her to approve of, for her to send out. And this is the table that she had sent me with the different plants that she wants, with the common name and the scientific name, with the quantity, the cost per plant, and the total. And all the plants that she wants comes out to be around $147, which is $47 over the budget for the grant itself. But she said that she would cover anything outside of that once we figure out the grant application.
And as for problems we faced during this project, the main problem that we encountered was the irrigation faucet, or the wall connection to the faucet itself. As pictured here, you can see it is very old, and there's even a crack in it right here. So when we hooked up the hose and turned it on, water just started spraying out from here and around the seal. And we thought, okay, well maybe we just need to tighten it and then get another hose. So we used another hose and tried again, and we had the same issue. So what we ended up doing was just using the first hose that we had and just kind of like using our finger as pressure to spray across the beds, because otherwise it was just kind of slowly flowing out. But we have mentioned it to maintenance, and they will get to it eventually. We just do not know when that will be. And as I mentioned earlier, there was an ant bed. It was in the very corner of the garden beds, and when we had started digging it out originally, we realized that the ant bed goes all the way down to the bottom, about 3 feet worth of anthill, and that just wasn't feasible, which is why Kirsten thankfully had ant killer, and we just sprayed that on the mound, and it was easy after that. It was just soil again after that. And then again, our budget was an issue. We were originally going to use shade cloth, but shade cloth costs money, and we were able to use cardboard instead, which honestly I prefer because it is more biodegradable than shade cloth is. And for the plant portion, as Kirsten was mentioned earlier, it was $147, and that is just not something that the YOW could provide at the moment, so we would need to apply for a grant. And then the rest would come out of Dr. Lane's pocket, and she said she would gratefully do so. And she even mentioned to us that she's spent quite a bit on the YOW before, so it wouldn't be a problem for her.
Okay, so our overall success. So as we had mentioned, we weren't able to get the plants that we wanted to be able to in time, since it used up our time not only, and then we couldn't get in contact with the nurseries as soon as we would have liked to, but we had still made the courtyard garden more aesthetically pleasing. There's no longer overgrowth of weeds and spillage of the roots out on top of the brick. It's more cleaned up. There's just the cardboard that you can't even see anymore due to the mulch and the wood chips that we have gotten put down. So it looks a whole lot better, and it's completely ready for the next step of new plants whenever that is feasible. And we've also cleaned out this fern box that is right here by the windows, and gotten out the dead matter and everything, and it looks a whole lot better, and it can grow and add more fronds now.
And then for our future ideas, we have these species that we would like to recommend specifically for the gardens, and like swamp milkweed, blue bumblebee, and a few others. Really what we just wanted to do is, since we couldn't actually get to the point where we were planting plants, we would like to propose an idea that a future Rec and Eco project would be made from this, and that the main goal of that project would be to plant these plants and plant other plants that are native for the area that can be used for educational purposes and relaxation purposes, like for herbaceous or just studying.
It could also be used as like extra credit for Dr. Lane or Dr. Moore, since this was their stakeholders. They were our stakeholders for this project, as well as there's the podium in the corner that would also, they said, would be a future project for somebody, so there's always room for improvement. But thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. That is our presentation. Thank you.